Hello friends, welcome to my channel Sushant Chess Wise. Today we are going to look at the next topic, that is the position solving for improvement. So we have looked at this chapter before also, and gradually I will try to increase the difficulty level of this chapter. Today we are going to move on with the slightly more difficult positions, and each time I will try to take cases where we add something new to what we have already been doing. So if we look at this position, again we will try to evaluate the position in the same way. We will try to see the activity, king safety, and then the material, and we will try to find moves for both the sides. When we look at this position, we come to know that materially there is a pawn less. See, 4 pawns and 1 5 versus white's 4. This is what we usually see first. But first what we should see the activity or the king safety. So we can immediately look and understand that the queen, the rook and the bishop, all the three are very close to the black king. Why I am saying and counting the bishop? Because see, from g5 it can enter f6. Rook immediately can go to h3 and queen is already close. Pieces, the queen, rook are far away from his own king. Knight guards the g7 square, rook also guards the g7 square. Knight is also helping to control the f6 square. b into c3 is hanging. Maybe the last move would have been bc3 by black. Okay, but what white should consider here the most obvious moves, because king has no place. So qh7 check, rook h3 and bg5. These three moves should of course come into mind. If we apply the method properly, we will see that queen into h7 check allows black to have only one move. So there is only one variation. So we should always have look in this first. Second would be rook h3, threatening mate on h7. To rook h3 I can just do rook g7. After the move bishop g5, idea bishop f6. Black can try to move the pawn to f5 and help the rook support the h7 square. And in fact, maybe there is no direct threat. Rook h3 is a slower threat in that. But f5 will help black. White played the move qh7. Let's see what he calculated. qh7 check, king h7, rook h3 check. King has to go to g7, and it looks like the king is able to escape from f8. But the move bishop h6 check, forcing the king back to h7 or h8. And we see that the rook, bishop and king are in the same line, and the end is the mating pattern, bishop goes to f8. See, whenever this g8 is occupied by his own piece or controlled by some of our other piece, then on the h file we say that the move bishop f8 helps to control the g7 square, and if nothing can interpose between the rook, then it will be a mate. So like in the game, so qh7 check, kh7, rook h3 check, kg7, bh6 check. Now king h7 or h8 wherever, bishop f8, and it's a checkmate. See, this is a pattern we should try to remember. The g8 is guarded by his own piece, g7 is guarded by our bishop, and this discovered check helps to mate. Do note that black should not be able to interpose anything on the h5 square. Maybe if queen could come from e2 to h5 or something like that, then the mate would have not happened. See, the moves which I am showing you, I can play them directly, but the reason I am not playing them, so that we develop the ability to imagine the position. So developing imagination is one of the important goals, along with finding moves and evaluating the position. Let's look at the next position here. At first look, we see that two pieces, knight and the rook, are close to the black king. Knight even attacks the rook on e6 and the pawn on f7. The first look itself says that white should have a good play because he is getting knight into rook. But see the pieces over here. White has sacrificed a knight in order to reach this position. So if we count the pieces, we see that queen to queen, rook to rook, rook to rook, bishop to bishop and bishop to bishop, knight for knight, and one knight is extra. Let's have a look at the pawns. There are 5 pawns and black has 4. So one pawn is there for the piece, which is insufficient. Let's have a look at the king safety. Black's bishop and queen are able to attack the g2 pawn, which is very well protected right now. Already the supports are enough. Let's look at black king safety. 1. Knight controls h7, knight controls f7. This square is important for giving check. Rook is able to control till g8. We should see through the pieces. Queen can go to h5, which check can be very important, but right now it looks as if it will go for free. And look at this bishop on b1, which will help to control till h7. That is why it's very important to see through the pieces. So the candidate moves which come to mind: first, nf7 check, second, qh5 check, third, knight e6. So these three moves at least should be there. As per our method, we will check the lines which force black the most. So we have got one, knight f7. After knight f7 there are 1, 2 and 3 king moves. After queen h5 check, we see that gh is 1. King moves will not do because king g7, g8 both lead to mate instantly. So seeing further helped us here, and there is only bh6 which also goes for free. So practically speaking, after queen h5, gh is forced. So what happens? Many people do what when the piece goes for free, they leave their calculation there itself. But the method says, as I told you before also, we should at least see our move, opponent's move, and at least one more move for ourselves. Lies deep, we should see at the least. And if things happen forcefully from there, then we should go from 3, we go to 5 plays, means 2 more plays. Always leave the calculation after our move, not just the opponent's move. So white thought of the move queen h5 here. Immediately he realized if gh takes the queen, then what happens? The rook's file is opened and the bishop's diagonal. Both are opened at once. And what happens? See, let's imagine the pawn is not there. Then what will happen? Knight f7 check would be made because rook is guarding g8, g7 both. King is guarding h7. So see, qh5 check, g into h5. Then see, knight f7 checkmate. Many people miss similar combinations in their games because the piece is going for free and they don't see further. After qh5 check, black had to play the move bh6, only way to extend the game. Then queen h6 check, king g8, and here we look at another pattern where h7 and f7 both are guarded by queen and knight. So right now queen guards h7, but after the check the queen guards f7 square. So note that qh8 is not met, king would have escaped from e7, but then queen f7 is checkmate over here and white wins the game. Let's look at the next position here. Immediate look at the board would tell us that the black king is in somewhat danger. All positions are white to play. Let me tell you that. Again, white to play over here. And what we see that the both kings are in danger in fact. So black has 2 queens. I have placed the rook other way around because let's assume that it's a queen right now. Okay, and there is a bishop, queen and queen versus queen, rook and bishop. So queen for rook situation is there over here. And pawns we can see that black has 4 and white has 3. Right now the a pawn has no significance. Black would simply win the game if he is able to trade the queens after qg1 check. One of the easiest ways to win the game when up in material is to trade pieces. Okay, so white had got into this position thinking that the black king is not well placed and he will be able to mate over here. So what we see that the squares near the king are very nicely guarded. g5 and h6 are guarded by queen and bishop both. Rook attacks f7 and f6 both. Only the square h5 is somewhat safe. So the obvious moves which come to mind are rook f6 check, queen h6 check, seeing that the g7 pawn defends both f6 and h6, and maybe e into f. But we already know any slow move will allow qg1 check and black will be able to force things. So here absolutely it's important that we are able to do everything with check, otherwise white will end up losing the game. So let's look at qh6 first or rook f6 first, depends on in which line variations are less. So if we look at rook f6, we see that there is g into f6 and king h5, two options, out of which we can say that q h5 and q g5 mates. So practically rook f6 also one option, and after q h6 check, g h6 is only move, there also one option. So we don't know actually which one to go into. So as per the method, we have to work out in both lines. If the first one is not working, we go into the second line. So let's look at rook f6, g f6, queen h6 check. Now the king goes to f7, and after queen f6 only check available. Queen h7 is not available because of bishop h7. Later on there is only bishop left. Q h5 check allows bishop g6. So queen f6 check, and the king can go to either e8 running away or even to the square g8. When we can say that at the most white is able to repeat by checks. That's it, but he is not able to win. Now we should think about the move qh6. See, more than solving the position, we are trying to follow the method and see whether it works. This can give us very good improvement in the game, and eventually it will give us good results also. So after qh6, gh6 forced, then rook into f6 check, only two checks we had. Rook f6 forces me to go to either g7 or h5. After rook g8 we can see there was king h5 and king f7. There were two moves in that also, but after king f7 further there are no checks. So qh6, gh6, rook f6, kg7. If king h5, then rook h6 is the checkmate. Bishop guards the rook, king has no place to move. Let's look at the other line. Queen h6, gh6, rook f6, kg7, then bishop h6 check. This is the most important move. Many people miss that. And after bishop check, king has to go to g8 or h8, whichever. Then rook f8 mates. Let's see the moves now. Queen h6 check, gh6, rook f6 check. If king h5, then rook h6 mates. One of the best ways to improve your imagination is to see the last position like this and put the position again from starting and try to imagine whatever we calculate. Try to imagine the pieces as clearly as possible. qh6 check, gh6, rook f6 check, king went to g7, then comes bishop h6 check, king goes to g8 or h8, wherever, in this case rook f8 checkmates. So again what we saw, white was able to use the method properly. He had forced the moves. It is quite possible that before a1 became queen, white must have calculated this line, how the mate would happen. So his evaluation must have helped him to get to the right solution. Look at the next position here. The position looks little complicated. We can easily see that white is on the top of his game. Queen, rook, knights are quite capable of attacking near the king. Queen is eyeing the e5 square. Rook can see till d8. Knight controls e7 and d8. And this knight is able to control f6 and d6 squares, which can help to give check to the king. So that's why we are considering as a piece nearby. Note the bishop, which can go to b5 and h5. Both are white squares which aim towards the king. h1 rook is not playing any role right now, but the move is white's. Let's look at black's pieces. Black queen is little away from his king, although it can block the third rank. Rook is undeveloped. Rook on b7 is highly misplaced. Usually the squares like b7, g7, they are bad for the rook, especially here. It looks like it's helping to control e7, but it's very oddly placed. It is snatching away the place for the bishop. Both bishops are very bad, and the knight is just defender of e5. So we see that black pieces are either inactive or they are just defending. Okay, some are undeveloped, others are defending. So passive pieces for black. Looking at the pawns, we see that 3 and 2, 5, and black has got one pawn. Just one pawn for so much suffering. Okay. See, generally there is a rule that one pawn means what? 3 developments are equivalent to one pawn, but it's not so all the time. Many a time just 2 developments, 2 moves can be too much, okay, than a pawn. So what we see here, that white was able to force a combination. If we understand the weakness quickly, we will see that rook wants to reach d8. So finding the first move is not difficult. Queen e5 check. So the moves which come to our mind, see rook d7, first is queen e5 because check. Then there is knight d6 check. Then rook d7 destroying the defender of the e5 pawn. And there is knight e5 trying to just take the pawn for free. See, so many moves, and white got the answer very quickly because he was following the method and he was forcing the moves. Mainly what he noted, that king has no place. So when king has no place, the sacrifice check becomes very effective weapon. Okay, so now see, after queen e5, he started his calculation in queen e5. So after queen e5, we see that if knight takes e5, then rook d8 mates. Okay, let's play it quickly and see. Queen e5, knight e5, rook d8 and checkmate. This was quite easy, but the problem was in the line queen e5, queen e6. There was one more move after queen e5, b7, but then queen e7 mates. Now what white thought, after queen e5, queen e6, he can easily do queen e6 check, first candidate, fe6 and then bh5 check, but there is the move g6 and then after nf6 check, king goes to f7. Let's have the other moves which we used before. So at the time of queen e5, we had knight d6, knight f6, rook d7. See, these were the checks. So this he can use these moves on the second move again. That is the huge benefit of finding the moves. So moves which we are finding now for this move can be applicable. Some of them can be applicable on the next move. So that is what happened here. After queen e5, black went queen e6, and now white understood that this knight and this pawn, they are the defenders, because we saw that how g6 stopped the mate on h5. Okay, so g6 was blocking the diagonal. So now what happens? He went for the move knight f6. This knight f6 move would have been very difficult to find if white would have not understood that these both are the defenders, and see, the sacrifice happens on the common point, which is another thing which we see time and again. So knight f6 check, very easy to spot. After knight f6, rook d8 again mates. Queen cannot take on f6, so only move gf6, and after gf6 we already calculated queen e6 check, fe6 and bh5. See, such a picturesque position we can say, and the black king got mated very badly. See, this is actual game position, and we generally think, see, combinations happen only in the positions in our own games we are not able to generate. The reason is, if we try to look for the real reasons why the combination should happen, try to evaluate the position, then making the combination in own games will be very easy. Today's positions were slightly difficult. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Do like, share and subscribe the channel. Thanks for your time.